Keeps his feet, keeps his balance. A fantastic fit for Barcelona.
You simply cannot argue with the fact that Barcelona are a great watch this season, especially when you compare them to, well, themselves in some of the more recent years. And while they have mostly figured things out on the pitch and have looked brilliant at times, they continue to be chaotic off of it, even when things seem to be heading in the right direction.
Being a Barcelona fan, you don't have to just understand football. You have to understand the legal system in Spain, the tax system, the financial system, everything.
For someone on the outside looking in, it seems like supporting Barcelona is some kind of test or experiment. You go from the chaos of the tail end of the Bartomeu era into an inherited mess for Laporta, having to cut players, having to sell off future revenues, palenkas and levers galore. Now you have some incredible promise on the pitch, only that chaos is still constant off of it, and it looks like the rug can be pulled at any moment. I mean, supporting Benfica is frustrating at times, sure, but the average blood pressure of Barca supporters has got to be higher than any of the other top clubs in Europe.
Maybe that's why it's so exciting. I don't know.
So let's examine that, shall we? The brilliance on the pitch, the chaos off of it, and how Barcelona supporters kind of digest all of this. And as you can see, I have a great guest today in Robbie Lou. If you're a Barca supporter watching this video, then I'm sure you've seen some of his videos on YouTube. Brilliant creator, rational voice in the Barcelona fandom. I've linked to him below just in case you don't know him, as he's a subscription well spent for Barca supporters. Okay, let's go.
You are watching one of the best young players strut his stuff.
Now, the difference in Barcelona this season from last is absolutely how they have done in the attack, because while they are actually 3 points short of where they were after 19 matches last season, this season they have 38, whereas last season Xavi had 41. They have been just so much better to watch. A big part of that is the attack, where they have scored 16 more goals in La Liga alone than last season. But another big thing has been the rise of even more young players in the team. But is it a question of Flick giving more opportunities to the young players? And if it isn't, why does it feel that way?
Xavi gave Lamine his debut in the title-winning season. He gave Kubarsi his debut last season. He used Hector Ford a little bit last year, but he was able to incorporate plenty of La Masia players, even though I think it was just a timing situation where most of these guys were coming into an age where they can actually play for the first team under Hansi Flick. But Xavi was still very good at it. I think it's a symptom of Barcelona not being able to bring in signings. You know, you see Chelsea bringing a new manager, they're going to make signings for him, or they're going to bring in guys. A big club brings in a new manager, they will make changes to affect his play, to fit his team. Hansi Flick didn't have that ability.
So there's a mix of things going on, right? It's a mix of Casado being so central to their success, having a Lamine Yamal who has taken leaps and bounds since the end of last season and the Euros, as well as, well, Barcelona thus far just looking better. The eye test plus the mostly great results, including huge results against huge clubs like Bayern and Real Madrid, really does help to change how things are viewed, right? The utilization of the young players is seen as masterful when things are going well, whereas it can seem irresponsible otherwise. Maybe that's not quite applicable in Flick's situation, as he was forced into playing some of these guys, and fortunately, they have all performed pretty great.
Monaco's been one of the big guns.
But speaking of things potentially going wrong, it's clear that Flick hasn't been perfect. For all of the times where Barcelona have looked to be a top club in Europe again, they have also had some major lows performance-wise, peaks and valleys. So where could Flick be better?
Being pragmatic or more pragmatic at the beginning of the season, I was worried it would be a little bit like Ange ball, where they're going to play this way no matter what. And in the Monaco game and then another match where we got red cards and we fell apart. We couldn't defend well. We kept playing the exact same way we had played, which is that super high line, very aggressive front foot football. You can't do that when you're a man down. It just is not sustainable for a long period of time.
But they did show signs of improvement based on this example directly, going down a man in their recent win against Real Madrid.
I think Madrid were terrible in that match, but it showed that Hansi Flick, the training staff, the team was able to find a way to win, to step back and defend, and change their mentality, maybe change the way they play without losing, without giving up the lead entirely. And you could give that maybe Araujo's back, and that can change things, absolutely. But just seeing that improvement over the season, even though we are in a lower point probably over the last 2 months than we had earlier in the season, seeing that piece of this team being able to improve is important to me, especially going into the knockout stages of the Champions League.
But this example of Barcelona adapting well after a potential banana skin comes after a period where they were suffering in La Liga, 1 win in 7 matches, allowing both of the Madrid sides to not only catch them, but surpass them in the standings. Where Barcelona was in first place for 16 match days consecutively, they dropped to 3rd and are now 6 points off of the top. Suddenly, they were losing to teams like Las Palmas, respect to Las Palmas, Leganés, drawing Celta Vigo. When they lost, it was always just by a single goal. It's not as if the offside trap had caught up to them, just as many pundits thought it would. So what was going wrong?
It was the finishing. I think that's the only reason we were losing most of these games. We just didn't finish well. We created a lot of chances in almost every single one of these matches. They're not necessarily all the highest quality chance, but we've created a lot in almost every single match. Even with Lamine Yamal, we just couldn't finish the same way. Rafinha dropped off with his incredible finishes, some earlier this season and one with his head against Madrid, but Lewandowski is the same story, where he actually, as of a few games ago, was underperforming his XG, which is right along where he is most of his career. He's not a wild outperformer of his XG, with the exception of the Gerd Muller record-breaking season in Bayern. Now, XG is not a perfect stat, but Barcelona were creating a lot of chances. They arguably should have scored them.
We also saw a bit of this Barcelona side without Lamine Yamal, a guy who has basically been ever present in Hansi Flick's lineups all season long. And why wouldn't he be, right? If you're going to look past the, overplaying too much at a young age risks that come with the amount that he has played at just 18 years old, looking directly at his ability, strictly at his ability, of course you'd want him out there for every single minute of your matches, right? But without Yamal, there were still some very encouraging signs.
It's playing a little bit differently. It's not necessarily creating on the right in the same way. It's just finding ways to create elsewhere without, maybe like a normal team. Lamine is so good, you can easily just let him play and rely on him. And I think that's what they had done sometimes, and it works when he's on the pitch. But without him, you don't have that tool. And when you don't have that tool, you're worse off. The team was more threatening with Balde a little bit on the left side. We saw Rafinha move over to the right, and that wasn't the best because he's not a 1v1 winger. That's not who he is. He's more of an inside forward. And he was not the greatest there. We've seen him improve a little bit over the past few matches there. It's just kind of all around maybe figuring it out how to play centrally, having Dani Olmo shift over to the right, or whoever our number 10 is, if it's Gavi, not necessarily trying to find someone who can do what Lamine does, but find a way to create as well in the absence of Lamine in a way that, keeps this team firing as much as they can.
Barca won just once without Lamine Yamal. That was against Barbastro in the Copa del Rey, but have shown signs of diversifying their attack. Horses for courses, or maybe it's more like adjusting the course for the horses you have. I think I just said the same thing but differently. But anyway, so things in general are looking good on the pitch for Barcelona. They've looked genuinely brilliant at times, which is great for a team that's in the first season with a new coach and with some very young players in the squad. They even got some good news when it came to Ronald Araujo seemingly being convinced to stay after he looked so good after coming on the pitch against Real Madrid in the Supercopa. But off of the pitch, well, it's been typical of the Barcelona of the last 5 or 6 years. Better, but typical.
La Liga have removed signings Dani Olmo and Pau Victor from Barcelona's list of registered players.
Barcelona were suffering in their games. They were going through that aforementioned run of 7 matches with just a single victory in La Liga, and then the stories of Dani Olmo not being able to play for them and potentially leaving on a free came out. You would excuse some Barca supporters for thinking, well, fellas, it was nice while it lasted. Surely results will continue to slip. We'll lose some signings in an embarrassing, strange fashion, and we'll be right back into the Bronze Age of Barca, baby. And so naturally, the pitchforks were out and raised to the heavens, ready to skewer Laporta for what was seen at the time, and kind of still is, as a ridiculously stupid and embarrassing mistake regarding player registration.
Everyone is very quick to kind of just shatter someone or just talk so poorly about someone, and mainly Laporta. People are so quick to just give up hope, especially with Barcelona. It's worrying, but it's not surprising to us. I think that's why it was so easy for us to talk poorly maybe on Joan Laporta or be so dismayed at the situation, because it is ridiculous. But I think we had entered a stage finally where we felt like it wasn't going to happen anymore. Things like this were over. it very clearly is not. It doesn't give off a good image of the club for players that might want to come.
Which, of course, surely you saw Rafinha saying as much in light of the Olmo situation, but in case you didn't read what he said, quote, Barça tells us things will be resolved soon, but it's a tough situation for Dani and Pau. If I were at another club and saw Pau and Dani's situation, I might reconsider whether being here is the best choice. However, when I joined, I knew what was happening and I don't regret it. In the eyes of the club, maybe he was a little bit too honest, but Laporta didn't go against Rafinha when he spoke. Instead, calling out the media, saying, quote, Rafinha wanted to highlight the greatness of this club. It was you, the media, who duped him. Now, Barcelona supporters were quite charitable with Laporta since his arrival, as he inherited a situation that was far, far, far from ideal. He had to let go of club legends, he had to roll the dice with some financial levers, putting the future of the club at risk, and it feels like the issue of registering players just won't go away. What happened with Dani Olmo? Well, as with anything that happens between La Liga, the RFEF, and the clubs in Spain, it's all murky and is a bit of a, well, it depends who you ask kind of situation. But here's the quick simplified version. RFEF claims that Barcelona didn't have the funds necessary in order to be able to register Dani Olmo and Pau Victor for the second half of the season, given they were registered for the first 4 months of the season only due to long-term injuries to other players within the Barcelona squad. RFEF claims that Barcelona had a December 31st, 2024 deadline to file all of the papers and the proof of finances in order to allow the registration of the players, and that Barcelona did not meet that deadline. Therefore, Dani Olmo and Pau Victor would not be registered, as they were deregistered as of January 1st, and they don't allow players to be registered to a team twice within a single season. However, Barcelona contested this last week, the Spanish courts got involved, and they granted Barcelona an exemption from this, a 3-month exemption, where Olmo and Victor would be eligible to play for Barcelona while they went through all of the complexities of the law and figured things out. Now, just this week on Tuesday, January 14th, Laporta spoke to the media and he said this of the whole situation. Quote, on December 27th, we presented to La Liga before the end of the year and within the deadline the application for the registration of both players, but La Liga asked us to complete the documentation. On the 31st, we thought we had met those requirements to return to the one-to-one rule, that clubs cannot spend more on players when they earn in revenue, but La Liga asked for additional requirements. Part of this was needing some cash, right? So Barcelona hurriedly sold off their VIP seats in the under-renovation Spotify Camp Nou to investors. The arrival of the cash was also very last minute, at the end of December, as Laporta said, quote, there is an investor from Qatar who subscribed 30 million euros and paid it out, and we credited it to La Liga, and the other from the Emirates for 70 million euros. 40% had to be paid in, and it didn't arrive until the 31st. The banks had closed, and we didn't credit it until the 3rd of January. We fulfilled all the requirements before the 31st. The regulation does not say that it has to be credited. It is a requirement of La Liga, and we supplemented what we could, but the accreditation of part of it was later. Laporta has also said that Barcelona are back to the 1-to-1 ratio that La Liga requires, so they can go ahead and sign players and register them as usual. And my first thought, if I was a Barcelona supporter, I would be slow to trust his word at the moment. The hurried, disorganized nature of how Barcelona went about this is unbecoming of a massive, massive club, a huge brand known worldwide. To constantly be on their heels like this, it's a bit strange. But, I mean, again, I'm not a Barcelona supporter, so what do they think about Laporta? Can they trust his word at this point? I mean, he seemingly brought them to a much, much better place compared to the Bartomeu 1.2 billion in debt days, but it always seems to be murky, doesn't it?
He's a politician, he's a lawyer, he's gotten into his position one way, and you know, I think he is good at a lot of things. But telling us the truth and being fully transparent with what is going on in this club is not one of the things he is very good at. And we all know that. I think that's why it's so easy for us to be so upset about the situation. If he were transparent about, okay, we submitted these things at this point and we're doing this now to get this through, it would maybe be a little bit easier, but it's just not that simple with him. And he's not a perfect president. A lot of people wanted him to leave for a reason. It is a ridiculous thing to not be able to register someone.
To fully understand the team and everything going on behind closed doors, Honestly, I mean, you may need to go to school to get a general business operations degree or something like that. The Barça degree will soon be a prerequisite to being able to support the team.
Being a Barcelona fan, you don't have to just understand football. You have to understand the legal system in Spain, the tax system, the financial system, everything, just to understand how the team works. And it's true. It is ridiculous.
On top of the prerequisites required to understand Barcelona, you also need to be mentally prepared for the next shoe to drop, for the next lever to be pulled. And maybe this lever sees you fall through a trap door instead of it being a financial boon to the club. There's got to be this constant feeling of, what's next at the moment? Scared of getting too comfortable because you're waiting for the rug to be pulled, no?
Yes. Just yes to all of that. I am very excited. I am also nervous that all of this can be taken away in a second, because that's just the way this team is. They are in a poorer financial situation than they have been in years past, even if they are better now than they were a few years ago. That doesn't mean what's going on the pitch is not exciting, because it absolutely is the most exciting moment this team has been in 5-6 years, maybe more. The fact that you can argue that they are one of the best teams in world football right now is not really something you could have done, and had very good luck with that argument for years. And that is incredibly exciting. And I think also it's a lot to do with just the quality of players coming out of La Masia. This team has some insurance over the next few years. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in Spain. We'll see if they get relegated into the second division for some reason that I don't understand, but might happen, because who knows? It's always concerning, but it maybe that's why it's so exciting. I don't know.
It seems like the wackiness of Barca won't end anytime soon, so strap in and work on those law and Spanish tax degrees while you're at it. Thanks again to Rob for joining me on this one. Check him out. And if you like this, then drop a like for the algorithm, all right? Thanks, guys. Take care.